Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. Serious, what's the creepiest true story that happened to you or someone you know? I just moved into a basement suite. Every time I went out I would lock the deadbolt but not the door handle, but when I came home a lot of the time the deadbolt would be unlocked and the door handle would be locked. It kept happening and I realized someone must be going in when I went out. I assumed it was the landlady and was annoyed but didn't say anything at first. Then one day I came home and found the wrong lock locked again. I went in pissed off and opened the fridge to get something to eat. I collected old books and this one was published in the early 1900s, which creeped me out completely because it was like it had been left for me. I finally called my landlady and asked if she was going into my apartment and told her what had happened. She got all the locks changed that day and it never happened again. Didn't realize until years later that I was almost snatched. Grew up in a small town. Out playing in the yard with my two younger siblings like every other summer day. Guy pulls up alongside the yard in a truck, calls me over. Asks my name, if I'm having a good summer. He says he could really use my help, he's out looking for his lost puppy. No, closer. The picture is small, can I please help him? I yelled to my brother on the other side of the yard den, come help us find a puppy. I have to assume he thought I yelled Dad because he noped, screeched out of there without another word. I remember being really worried about that puppy, until we had an assembly at our primary school about things strangers might say to lure you into their vehicles. When I was a child I was always stricken by this irrational fear that when I went outside at night, I had to walk straight into the house without looking back, because if I looked back, someone would be following me. One day after dinner I went out to the car to get my book bag, and I was continuing my ritual of walking straight inside without looking back, adrenaline pumping, anxiety going full force, and I just stopped and said to myself, this is stupid. I made myself look back. When I looked back I saw what appeared to be someone crouched down behind my mom's car and was peeking their head around. They were just staring at me and smiling. It appeared to be a woman in her mid-30s, maybe 40, with curly short blonde hair. I stood frozen for a second and then ran inside. I told my mom. We went outside to check. No one was there. My mom didn't exactly not believe me, but she wasn't very concerned either. My family were driving on the rural main road of Poland. We're Polish, and next to our car was this truck delivering large concrete pipes. We drove next to this truck for maybe an hour, maybe two. I was a teenager so I didn't really care. My dad figures we stop at the next gas station for a quick toilet break. As I exit the car, a pair of bikes drive past the gas station. I noticed because it was loud as FCK, PP over, and we go back on the road. About a mile or so down the road there's an accident. The bikes had caught up with the truck and as they were about to drive past it the large concrete pipes fell off the truck and smushed the bikers. Maybe they weren't fastened properly, or the truck swerved, blood everywhere. I still have a hard time thinking of what could have happened. My mom and her friend were out and about late at night, heading to a party. Their car broke down, and being a rural town with a small population, they had to walk about a mile to the nearest house for help. He was horrified to see them out late at night, alone. He let them use his phone but scolded them saying it was not safe, the location, time and circumstances. He let them know they were absolute fools and heeded a somewhat vague warning. When the girls got back to their car, there was a severed cow head on the hood, blood everywhere. This was near Hermiston, Oregon, apparently well known for devil worshippers. When I was about 9 or 10, my older brother and I had a few friends over to stay the night. My dad had to work the next day so we were all left at the house by ourselves for the day. We were excited to play PlayStation all day on our Saturday off. Well, my dad worked late that night, until probably 8 or 9. Fast forward 30 minutes and we start hearing footsteps slowing walking up the wooden stairs. My dad wasn't going to be home for another 2 hours so we didn't know who it was. There were 4 of us, me, my brother, my friend, and his friend. This continued for probably 2 hours, ending with all of us huddled in the room upstairs with the door wedged shut with a chair until my dad got home. None of us were really believers in anything paranormal, but a child's imagination is a crazy thing. I bring it up to my friend who I'm still friends with and he remembers it just as vividly as I do. It kind of creeps me out just thinking about it. Rented a cabin for a week with my first night there. We had spent the day visiting her family, the actual reason for our trip, had dinner. She got pretty wasted. Get back to the cabin, carry my inside, to find all our bags open/dumped onto the floor. This set me into panic mode. I hadn't been drinking and I routinely carry, so I pull out my gun and sweep the house. I check every room, closets, even under the bed, nothing. My so is still fast asleep, so I check our stuff over and there's nothing missing. It had just been dumped onto the floor. It just really bothered me that there was no sign of break-in. I know I locked the place before I left, so either someone else had a key to my cabin, or whoever it was still inside the cabin. Either way, I didn't think I'd do much sleeping. It was too late to make other arrangements, and considering that most likely there wasn't anything to worry about really. We had been gone all day, from 9 a.m., midnight. So odds whoever it was did it was probably way earlier. But still, I couldn't shake it. I felt pretty silly sitting there, but I couldn't not sit there either. And sometime around 3 to 4 a.m., I fell asleep. I woke up the next morning around 7 a.m., sun shining through. I actually half scared myself because I hadn't meant to fall asleep, which then scared me again because I wasn't holding my gun. I start looking around, and on the couch is my gun. I'm like, what? Then I look, the front door is wide open. No fucking way. I jump up and start running to check on my so, thank God she was still there, untouched. I go back out into the living room and pick up my gun. All my bullets are missing. I go outside and look around, car and everything is still there, no signs of anybody. I walk back inside, look in the far corner of the living room and I see the corner of the main living room rug lifted up. I investigate, it's covering the opening to the crawl space. That means this guy was in my cabin the entire time. I must have pulled up and caught the guy in the act. He thought fast and hid in the crawl space. Then sometime during the night, crawled out, disarmed me, and walked right out the front door. I was walking home from the beach one day around noon and a guy driving down the street at a Ford Escape slows down and in slightly broken English asks me how much. I tell him to FCK off and he tells me $200 for an hour. Another guy steps out and walks towards me. I start screaming my head off and cussing them out, trying to draw attention on this busy street while fishing my knife out of my bag. I walked into the street and around the car, call my boyfriend and tell them it's the cops. They followed me for another minute and then drove past me really fast while calling me a fucking cunt. I was 16 at the time and I really wish I had called the cops because as an adult I am 100% sure I was about to be kidnapped and raped. There used to be billboards for anti-drunk driving campaigns that would show a picture of a happy family or whatever and then let you know they were all killed by drunk drivers. When I was about 16 I saw my own face on one of those signs, so, maybe I'm dead. One of these billboards was right by my work so I had to look at it every day. After telling my mom about it, she said the father of the kids next door was a photographer. When I was younger my dad was out of town and my mom let me have a few friends over. We lived right by a pretty busy highway and over the years had quite a few people knock on our door for help. Car broke down, lost, accident, etc. My mother told him he could sit on the porch and use her cell phone. The man kept asking to come inside and asking if my dad was home. He eventually started trying to force his way inside. My mom slammed and locked the door, called 911, and put my friends and I into a closet. By that time my mom had called our neighbor and he came over his shotgun and made the guy lay on the ground until the police arrived. My wife and I rented an old townhouse in Birmingham, Alabama about 10 years ago. It was spooky for no other reason other than it was old and in the woods. We are both suburban Californians so this was enough to freak us out a little. We used to joke that there was a presence in the house, but after a while we started experiencing strange things. When you would leave the kitchen after grabbing a snack, all the cabinets would be closed, but if you returned a few minutes later, all of the cabinets would be wide open. Later on things escalated. My wife would come home late after roller derby practice and we had very steep steps that led up to our door. Being the considerate husband that I would be sure to turn on the porch lights so she wouldn't trip. This caused my wife to once seriously trip coming to the door late at night. My wife complained often that she felt unsafe when I was working late and she was alone, and we began to realize whatever was in the house didn't like her specifically. Walking to the bathroom late at night and passing the hall mirror, we both spotted a disfigured woman in the reflection. Over the next year or so I would sometimes have nightmares about the woman I had seen and would wake up next to my wife and would jostle around. A few times this would wake my wife too and she would respond, "Go back to sleep, it's just a dream, I saw her too." The pinnacle of the event was late one night my wife came home and started screaming at me for no apparent reason, leveling nonsensical accusations and just being mean. I was in the middle of writing a paper due the next morning, so I told her I was not going to deal with and she should go to bed. An hour later I finished my paper and went to bed. When I got to the bottom of the stairwell leading to our bedroom, I turned on a light and was shocked to see my wife sitting at the top of the stairs, in what had been the complete dark. I was scared more than I've ever been in my life, but slowly walked up the stairs to her. When I got to the top, her eyes and hair turned normal and she began sobbing, saying that something was attacking her and she was filled with hate. We held each other through the night. My wife is convinced she was possessed. I believe she was as well. We live in California again and have been married for 8.5 years. Nothing has ever happened like that again. It was 2001 and my friend and I were 17, both female, and driving back from a late movie to my house one night. I lived in a pretty rural area in Maine, about 20 minutes from the nearest town. As we were driving down the highway through the woods, we passed a median with a car sitting in it, facing in the oncoming direction, with all its lights off. Right after we drove past it, it flashed its lights, did a 3-point turn and started driving behind us. The turnoff for my road was a few miles away and this car stayed behind us the whole time. We made the left turn and the car kept going down the highway. Phew. But 30 seconds later we realized that the car must have backed up on the highway and made the turn after us. Now we were getting a little worried. Now we were legit freaked. I had a long driveway and the car followed us right into the driveway and almost up to my house, which had all the lights on because my mom was home. We ran into my house, just in time to see the mystery car reverse back down the driveway and drive away. To this day we still have no idea why that car was following us, if they thought we were someone else or if they actually had bad intentions and only changed their mind when they saw that my house lights were on. In freshman year of middle school, 6th grade, there was a once-a-week group therapy session with developmentally delayed kids that involved them doing some crafts activity or playing with Legos or watching a movie as a group. I signed up pretty instantly as it meant an escape from history once a week. One of my best friends at the time had the same idea, and it basically turned into a second lunch period for us. The whole thing was overseen by a therapist named Bruce and it was generally pretty laid back. He ran most of the school's extracurriculars and was pretty much universally liked. The other important player in this story was a kid who I'll call G. You know that stereotype of psychopaths being obsessed with animal torture as a kid? This was dead on G. Most of us just sort of ignored him as it was just sort of assumed that he was all talk and just making up gross stuff to get attention. So one week we were playing with Play-Doh. Since it was a DD group, the huge tub of Play-Doh had long since assumed a uniform shade of dirt brown and the general drive was to get people to build things and tell stories about them. Most people just built dinosaurs or threw clay at each other. He eventually put a roof on it, which wouldn't stay on due to the lack of interior supports. The normal kids would always leave a few minutes early as the group ran right into the start of the next period and we'd need time to get to class. I got to my next class and the teacher wasn't there. Nobody knew what was going on. About 10 minutes later she finally showed up looking frazzled and wouldn't give us any information other than something happened that needed staff attention. Being 6th graders, we went nuts with speculation. A few hours later I ran into the friend from group, who was visibly jumpy and disturbed. He wouldn't tell me why other than mentioning that therapy group was cancelled indefinitely. I kept prying for information and eventually got the story out of him, so during the cleanup the Play-Doh had to be compacted back into its tub. This involved lots of smashing Play-Doh sculptures, a bit that the DD kids greatly enjoyed to the point where they try to smash other people's stuff. G's house was one of the last things to go, the last one with the pocket knife in it. I never saw either Bruce or G ever again. My babysitter was killed back in the mid-80s when I was about 6 to 7 years old. They found her body in a garbage bag near a department store and never found the killer. No one knew anything about it. No witnesses, no clues, and this was a smaller city of about 50,000 people. So when a crime happens, word travels fast. Posted a while ago in a similar thread, I was a chaperone for a Girl Scout camping trip when I was 16. The kids were about 5 to 9 years old. I had a cabin with 6 kids I was in charge of at night, and helped out during the day. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.